Pop Cult Pod. Broadcasting from an undisclosed location known as the Pop Cult Compound, where we're crazy for film, television, video games, and much, much more. I am your cult leader, Tompott, the host of the only podcast with an actual cult following, the Pop Cult Pod. Welcome to the show, and it's been a while, ladies and gentlemen, but let me just say, well, it's a big show. Indeed, it is. A lot of news, at least 4 trailers I want to talk about. Box office record smashed left and right. And of course, we have to get to Avengers Endgame. If you want to just jump straight to my discussion on that, timestamp at the bottom if you feel like doing an old time travel thingy. Just click that or zoom ahead somehow. I don't know. Whatever you're using, you know how to use it better than I do. So just click to the time you want to see. But for everyone else, let's settle up here and start off with a cool glass of Cool 8. Top 8 news stories from across the mediums. First news story is about Bond. Okay, Bond 25 held the most pointless press conference I've ever seen. Just this week, they were in Jamaica, basically saying, hey, we're filming in Jamaica. Which was like, okay, I could have guessed that from the press conference. They didn't give us a title, which is possibly the most concerning thing about this. Why would you even bother telling us about this movie? They basically told us things, for the most part, we already knew. But they made a big deal about filming in Jamaica because it's where Fleming came up with Bond and where Dr. No and Live and Let Die were filmed. They gave us a very rough plot synopsis, and this was what they said. It says, Bond has left active service and is enjoying a tranquil life in Jamaica. His peace is short-lived when his old friend Felix Leiter, who I must admit I thought his name was Felix Lester this whole time, I've been making an ass of myself, from the CIA, turns up asking for help. The mission to rescue a kidnapped scientist turns out to be far more treacherous than expected, leading Bond onto the trail of a mysterious villain armed with dangerous new technology. Wasn't there like a big technology subplot in the last one? I don't know. Seems kind of redundant, but okay. Returning cast of the film, as you'd expect, Daniel Craig is back. This is his last Bond role. Ray Fiennes is back as M. Léa Seydoux is back from Spectre. Naomi Harris as Moneypenny. Ben Whishaw as Q. For some reason, wherever I copied this from, this cast list, it says Ben Whishaw as A. Someone pressed the wrong button there. As Q. Rory Kinnear as Tanner, and Jeffrey Wright as Felix Leiter. Alright, here are the new cast members. Some interesting, some we knew about, some not really of note, but they told us anyway. In addition to the cast, French-Algerian actor Dali Bansala, Billy Magnuson, who's been in Game Night, we heard about him, rumoured already. I think they said he was playing a CIA agent, so could possibly see that coming to fruition. Ana de Armas is presumably our new Bond girl, and of course she's best known for Blade Runner 2049, where she burned up the screen and broke a lot of hearts. David Densick, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Lashana Lynch, who was most recently seen in Captain Marvel, and Rami Malek, of course. He was rumoured to be the Bond villain a couple of weeks back. He was from Mr. Robot and Bohemian Rhapsody, won Best Actor this year. So yeah, most of that stuff we knew already, especially the Rami Malek part, which should have been the exciting part. He actually wasn't even at the press conference. I think he was in America promoting a movie. So again, seemed a bit of a pointless press conference, but they didn't even tell us who was playing who or anything. And there might be a reason for that, which we'll get to. Alright, let's look at the writing credits. So last time we talked about this movie, I was talking about how there might be an issue with the script, and no one really picked up on that as far as the Hollywood trades go. But basically, last time we were left with this, we had heard of a writer that was rushing to do a rewrite because the reason Danny Boyle left was that he wanted to kill Bond, and Danny Boyle had brought in his own writer, and basically the script was a mess, and this might just confirm it, because listen to this for writing credits, okay? This is on one movie. Now, general rule of thumb, if there's a lot of writers on a movie, that could be an issue. You have people pulling in all directions. Sometimes it might just be simple as one person wrote a script that sucked, and one person added a certain element, another person added another element. So, of course, there has been good films with loads of writers, but it's pretty concerning for this one, if the rumours are true. First off, this is what the writing credits for the film is looking like. Written by Neil Purvis and Robert Wade. Now, there's an ampersand there for the and. That's important in writing circles. What it means is that they literally worked together while they were writing. Okay? Those writers basically only do Bond films. They have been, I think, with Bond since Die Another Day. So, a lot of ups and downs since then. So I think you can either take that as a positive or a negative, or just take it for what it is, which is that they seem to have a stable job in writing Bond movies. Scott Z. Burns, this is the writer I was talking about a couple of weeks back, who is basically a script doctor that they bring in to try punch up a film, and they try to get him on Bond for a long time, and very costly from the sounds of it. They managed to get him to do a rewrite on this. That's not the end of the writing credits though. Kerry Joji Fukunaga, who is of course the director, and I didn't even realise Joji was his name. I've just been calling him Kerry Fukunaga the whole time, but there you go. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge, that's the newest one that was announced, I think, maybe 2 weeks ago. She's created Fleabag, she's worked on Killing Eve. Sounds like, from what I've heard, that Daniel Craig requested her specifically. So that's a hell of that's 5 writers attached to this movie. It's a hell of a lot. And whether or not John Hodge, the writer that was involved when Danny Boyle was there, had any input and he just hasn't contributed enough to be credited, we don't know. This could be a real Frankenstein of a script. But let's talk about, I guess, another rumour about this thing. Now, again, just like last time, this hasn't really been picked up by the American trades, at least. I've seen a few British sites picking up on it, and I guess, Bond is British, so that makes sense. And they didn't really pick up on the last writing credit issue, and from what I can tell, it seems very true, given what we just heard about writing credits there. What they're saying is that production is meant to begin at the end of April, so it should have just started. And of course the release date is April 8th, so tight enough schedule. Giving yourself less than a year, but regardless, this rumoured title of Shatterhand, which we kept hearing, they hinted that that's false, but what it sounds like is that was going to be the title, and then they were like, oh, people don't like Shatterhand. No, that's not it. It's not the title. Here's where things get worrisome, though. This is the report I was talking about. Okay. This sounds very believable. Again, massive heaping of salt. That'll be good for your heart. What they've said is that the main reason that this whole press conference was there is that if they wait much longer, Daniel Craig is going to be too old to do the movie, and he just won't do it. I mean, like last time we heard about him talking about Bond, it sounded like he was done. He said something like, oh, I'd rather smash this glass and slit my wrist than do another Bond film. And yet here he is, and he seemed very bored in the last one. The reason he's apparently still around is that Barbara Broccoli thinks he's like amazing. That he walks on water, he can't do any wrong. Even though, according to this report, the crew hates working with him, he's difficult to work with. And, of course, the more troubling issue, you can get around, I guess, a difficult star, as many films have, is that it's not anywhere near close to shooting. That's what they're saying. And what they're basing that on is that, first of all, the script isn't finalised. They only have basically the start of the film hammered out, which is why the plot synopsis sounds very much like the first act. Doesn't give us much detail about what's going on. Now, again, a teaser plot synopsis for a movie, that's not uncommon anyway. But what they're saying is Phoebe Waller-Bridge is basically coming to get this thing together, because at the moment nothing is really set. That's why they don't have a title as well, because they don't really have this movie ready to go. But it sounds like they have to get it ready to go. I don't know. Maybe this is either going to be delayed, I think, or it's going to be rushed and it's going to be a mess. But regardless, other interesting cameo, well, it is an instant cameo, but what I meant to say is another interesting aspect to this report is that they said Grace Jones is going to have a cameo, not as her original character, and Christoph Waltz will be back, presumably as Blofeld. The Shatterhand title seems to imply that Bond's wife is going to be killed, which would be Léa Seydoux after Spectre. So that might lead some credence to that theory if Christoph Waltz is going to be back slightly. But anyway, that's a film that's having a bit of trouble, certainly. Maybe we should talk about films that are in even more trouble. And these are films that are being cancelled or killed or moved or shopped around, or basically Fox films that aren't being made by Disney anymore. So of course, when Disney acquired Fox, they inherited their slate and what was in production and all that. A few things like that are going to live, a few things are going to die. One of the biggest casualties is a film that was 2 weeks before filming, and that is The Mouse Guard, which I can say I haven't exactly heard of it, but people seem quite upset by this, that it's cancelled. What it is a comic about medieval mice. Pretty straightforward, really. But the problem is that it was going to have quite a high budget, so maybe Disney got cold feet and were a bit worried about that. For the most part, it sounds like Fox is going to be their home for lower budgeted films, or R-rated properties. So presumably all your Aliens, your Predators, if they make movies of those, that's where they will go. And stuff like low-budget indie movies, Fox Searchlight, for example. They have told the producers of the Mouse Guard, though, that they can ship it around, possibly hoping to send it to Netflix. Whether or not that happens, I don't know. Is it a property big enough to get people interested in? If it's I think the budget was meant to be was it close to $200 million? Maybe I'm wrong about that now, but it would be a bit of a gamble. I don't think it's a big enough property to put that amount of fate into it. But it's not the only movie that got moved or killed because of this deal. The News of the World with Tom Hanks and Paul Greengrass has been moved to Universal. This is based on a book. It follows the days after the Civil War where a captain called Jefferson Kyle Kidd. Apparently he's a precursor to some newscasters, but I don't understand that. I didn't look it up enough. I didn't have enough interest to find out, really. He has to reunite this 10-year-old girl with her relatives in the post-Civil War world, I guess. Again, Paul Greengrass has done a lot of work with Universal, so might be just, a favour more than anything. And again, Tom Hanks and Paul Greengrass, that maybe they could get some award love out of that, certainly. On The Come Up, which is based on a young adult novel by the same writer as The Hate U Give, that has been taken now to Paramount. The Hate U Give was a very successful book, and it was a well-received movie, but it lost a lot of money as far as I know. I think they put a lot of money into marketing and it just didn't pay off. I think, that probably could have worked as Fox, but maybe they just... Right now, I think that with Fox, they want to make sure they're not going to just completely screw it up. I think they're only going to go for surefire hits to get the ball rolling, maybe. And then the last one, this was, from the sound of it, a while off filming, but Fruit Loops, a Woody Harrelson mental hospital dramedy, that's been canned as well. So all of these movies, except for The Mouse Guard, were from Fox 2000. Fox 2000 recently was closed by Disney. Now again, at the time I kind of said, I don't see why you have Fox 2000 and Fox Searchlight. It seems like that's kind of the case. They don't need both. And yeah, I don't know. I can't say there's any movie in this I'm devastated about. I know a lot of people are gutted about The Mouse Guard, but the other ones, they're a bit niche. And I think maybe right now they're not looking for niche films out of Fox. I think they want the main ones. And it certainly sounds like that when you look at what they're keeping. This is the slate from Fox that Disney want to keep. And it's Free Guy with Sean Levy and Ryan Reynolds. That's like a video game comedy. I think Taika Waititi's in it as well. That sounds like a lot of fun. Makes sense. Death on the Nile is equal to Murder on the Orient Express. Murder on the Orient Express was big. I'm sure this was big. And I think they want to keep Kenneth Branagh in the Disney stable, Kingsman: The Great Game, a prequel, of course, to the other Kingsman movies. I stumbled on that for a sec. I think that's already started filming, as far as I know. And yeah, it makes sense. If you want to keep this Kingsman going, I think having a prequel is a good way to press the reset button if people didn't like the second one. Fear Street, I believe this is from R.L. Stine, so who did, of course, gave us Goosebumps. Low budget horror kids comedy. That's going to work, and you can put that under Fox instead of Disney, so you can get away with a bit more. That'll make it fun. And West Side Story. This is Steven Spielberg musical. Of course, you want to steal if you can get Spielberg on Disney's page. That's fantastic. Musicals are big. I'm guessing they're going to hope this gets award love later on. What I did hear interesting is that there was a bit of a contention apparently between Disney and Spielberg because the movie has young characters smoking, and Disney don't like that. But at the end of the day, if you're putting this out as Fox, that shouldn't be too big a deal. So hopefully kids get to smoke, which is a weird thing to cheer for. But if it's faithful to the musical, it should be. All right. Well, it's not the only adaptation that should be quite faithful, judging off our early or overreactions. See what I did there? That's a segment. Early reactions or overreactions for Detective Pikachu have dropped. And, well, pretty much sounds like it's great. It sounds like it may have broken this video game curse that we keep hearing about. It's out really soon. It's out like 10th of May. And the impressions are really positive. We'll pick up on some of the main points, is that it's nailed the world of Pokemon. They've said Pikachu is cute and it's a lot of fun, which I guess is what you want. I'll go through from a few specific reactions here. Terry Schwartz from IGN said, I just got out of Detective Pikachu. My first thought is, oh my god, how did they make Pikachu so cute? Completely nails the world of Pokemon, and just seeing their amazing live action creature designs is worth the price of admission. If you love Pokemon, you'll love this movie. Again, that seems like a very strong fan perspective, and I think you will notice that a lot of these reviews are from people that are like, oh, I'm a fan of Pokemon, and if you're a fan of Pokemon, you're going to love this. A lot of the same buzzwords, and that's not me pointing out anything shady. Just remember that with a lot of these Twitter or film reviewers, sometimes it's like we gave these people access because we know they're going to love it. Sometimes that's what it can seem like. So that's why I call it early reactions or overreactions, just because take all of these with a little bit of skepticism, just because not every film can be the best movie ever, you know? Dan Casey from The Nerdist said it's a pure joy from start to finish. It's heartfelt, relentlessly charming story filled with excellent world building, plenty of deep cuts for Pokemon fans. There must have been a grass type in the theatre because I got super misty-eyed in parts. I'm guessing Dan is a Pokemon fan then. Steve Weintraub from Collider said, if Rhyme City from Detective Pikachu was a real place, I'd make plans to visit tomorrow. It's a lot of fun, filled with Easter eggs. Pokemon fans are going to love it, but it's still welcoming to those that don't. I'm missing a word. Don't know the world, I'm guessing. So yeah, that's probably one of the most important things. The thing is, I think when you look at the biggest media franchises ever, Pokemon is like the top. Like, no joke. So, if you can get the people that don't love it on board, that's fantastic. But realistically, there's a big enough audience for this to succeed, even if general audiences don't get on board. Megan Peters from comicbook.com. It's a hit for Detective Pikachu. Pokemon fans new and old will rejoice in its heartfelt and authentic take on the franchise. Legendary and Warner Bros. Pictures have nailed this live-action adaptation. I laughed hard and felt my heart swell. This Pokemon film is just a stare for die-hard Pokemon fans. Detective Pikachu is a must-see. Never before has a franchise made its pocket monsters so accessible. It balances its massive world with such love, and Justice Smith, who's our male lead, is as captivating as any Pokeball. That's kind of important. Like, I haven't seen anyone else mention him yet. You could probably say, hey, it doesn't just rest on the shoulders of this CGI creature. Because, of course, the male lead is important. That's going to bring a bit of heart to the movie. Peter Scarella from SlashFilm.com. This is probably the closest thing we have to more mixed review, but it's still incredibly positive. He says, has the fantastic world building, fun adventure, and cute creatures that Fantastic Beasts franchises need. The story itself is just okay and slow. I'm sure I'd appreciate it more if I were a Pokemon fan or as a kid. Some adult fans were losing their shit. Well, again, it's nice to have a little bit of mix. Still incredibly positive. The world building aspect is something that I find interesting. And I'll explain why in a sec, okay? Paul Shirley, last review of JoeBlow.com, had fun time with Detective Pikachu. Silly, heartfelt and chock full of Pokemon, which makes for some great world building in what is sure to spin off into one hell of a franchise. Perfectly suited for fans and non-fans alike. Okay, I don't know if this tells us much that we didn't already know. Judging off the trailers, looks like it's fun, it's hard, Pikachu's cute, and it sets up the world somewhat. Now, let's talk about this world building thing. We're on about the video game curse here. Now, if this is about to be broken, and good chance of that, because this seems pretty positive. Now, we also had Tomb Raider last year, which wasn't all that bad, really. To be honest, it was one of those movies that if you saw it on a plane, you'd be delighted. Not that I'm going to watch it again. And they didn't announce a sequel to that, so it looks like video game movies are alive and well. Although we might get to something that might go against that argument in a minute when we get to the trailers. This is an odd way to do it, because obviously when it comes to Pokemon, Detective Pikachu isn't the game you think of. It's like Pokemon Red or Blue or Gold or those titles. Detective Pikachu is like a spin-off, so it's just an odd way to do it. It's like if they were making a Crash Bandicoot movie and they started with Crash Team Racing, It's just a bit surprising, but I think overall that might be a good way to do it, because having Pikachu be able to talk and having him at the start kind of looking through this world from an inquisitive point of view will help establish it for a follow-up that is more like what we know. Although I was thinking this before, I wonder if people are going to be pissed off when they see, hey, wait, all Pokemon can't talk? Oh. When it lands on the human characters, will it be boring? Like when you look at something like Godzilla, the human characters are always the boring part. So whether or not that could be the same with Pokemon, I don't entirely know. Well, talking of Fantastic Beasts like Pokemon, let's talk about Fantastic Beasts 3, which has been delayed. They're working on the script, apparently. You wouldn't know that from their statement. It was meant to come out in November 2020. Now it's coming out in November 2021. This is the statement. I think I'm missing some of the statement. But really, it's just the biggest slap on the back I've ever heard. It's such nonsense, okay? J.K. Rowling created an awe-inspiring universe that has captivated people of all ages, taking us on an extraordinary magical journey. Warner Bros. Is so proud to be the cinematic home of the wizarding world and is excited about the future of the Fantastic Beasts franchise. We look forward to bringing the third chapter of the 5-film series to audiences around the globe in November 2021. Jesus Christ. How did you manage to get that statement out with your lips pressed to J.K. Rowling's ass? Like, what is this? What is it? You're meant to be announcing a film being delayed or taking its time. and all you do is like, oh, isn't she great? Like, the reason this is delayed is because this last one was a mess. It made less money than the first one, and people did not like it. Have a bit of perspective. Address people's complaints instead of just, like high-fiving each other. I don't know. Whatever, I guess. I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan. I like it, but I'm not as captivated as a lot of people. It sounds like less people are captivated at that last Fantastic Beasts movie. The big issue people would have with that movie was the script from J.K. Rowling and the direction by David Yates. And they're both returning. Now, Rowling doesn't really have much experience with screenplays. You would think they'd get someone in there to help her. And they might just yet. And David Yates, a lot of people say he's kind of vanilla, bit boring. And look, everyone's saying, oh, we need like the way we had the first two Harry Potter movies and we had Prisoner of Azkaban, which really shook up the world and made things a bit, scary and a bit more interesting. Doesn't sound like we're going to get that, but it's really far away, obviously, before this will come to pass. So maybe they'll turn things around. But, God, that statement is nauseating in my opinion. Well, let's talk about some more magical people with WandaVision. This is, of course, the Scarlet Witch and Vision TV series. Don't worry, there's no spoilers here for Endgame. This is just what was revealed about the show, which is coming to Disney+. And we have actually news of another Disney series which just broke as of this recording. But we'll get to that in a sec. The WandaVision series, which is pretty awfully named, in my opinion. But carrying on. Elizabeth Olsen was talking at the premiere of Endgame, where she revealed some details saying that it's going to be 6 hours in length. Sounds like a lot of these shows are going to be between 6 to 8 episodes. And limited series. It's not going to be like season 2, season 3. It's like a one-off from the sound of it. She said they showed them a photo of herself and Paul Bettany in the 50s. Now all of these movie journalists, these bloggers, it is embarrassing how they fell for this. So they said it showed them like look in the 50s or whatever. And they all jumped and said, it's set in the 50s. This is set in the 50s. No. It's almost definitely not set in the 50s. What she's presumably saying is that it has a 50s sitcom vibe, because if you listen to the interview, they're like, what's the theme song going to be? And if you listen, it sounds very like, cutesy, I Love Lucy kind of thing. And if you did a little bit more research, that's probably because it's based on Tom King's Vision comic book series, which has that sort of aesthetic and tone. This is presumably going to be like a little 50s kind of sitcom with Wanda and the Vision. WandaVision. That's what we're getting with this, okay? So, no, it doesn't have to be set in the 50s. Like, could you imagine if that was the case? They'd spend so much setup trying to get it into the 50s to begin with. No, that would be a ridiculously stupid thing to do. They're not going to do that. Wait now and they'll do that. I'll have to eat my words in like 3 years. Assuming this podcast is going in 3 years, who knows? Jack Shea-Fair, who co-wrote Captain Marvel, is going to be the showrunner on this. She's also writing the Black Widow movie from Marvel. So she's definitely a staple going forward. Apparently it's going to shoot in the fall. So, coming pretty soon from the sound of things. I believe this is like the second year of Disney Plus that it's coming out in. But you never know. Maybe it could come out sooner. We got news of another Marvel TV series, and this just dropped about an hour ago, half hour ago. And this is coming to Hulu, so we don't know as many details right now. There was rumours of it yesterday, because Gabriel Luna, who plays Ghost Rider on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., said something like chains are rattling or something. Which of course is a reference to Ghost Rider's chain, because Ghost Rider and Hellstrom are getting a series. So Ghost Rider, I don't think he needs much of an introduction. He's had 2 movies. He was introduced on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., played by Gabriel Luna, who's also going to be in the new Terminator movie. So he seems to have confirmed he's back, which is good. It is concentrating on his character of Robbie Reyes. The other characters, Hellstrom, are generally called the son of Satan, and the daughter of Satan, Santana. Or Satana, I guess. Santana's the guitarist. So Satana and the son of Satan, basically they're the son and the daughter of the devil, and it's a hellish magic kind of series. So they're focusing on a cult series at the moment, and that series was launched because of the success of Ghost Rider and Blade. So that's got to raise an interesting possibility of maybe Blade could be one of these series. Essentially, what it looks like right now. We had, of course, the whole Netflix slate. That's all gone now, which makes sense because Disney are going to be competition. Disney more and more own Hulu now, and it looks like that's going to be the home for the darker Marvel series. So forget the Defenders for the moment. We're getting Ghost Rider and Hellstrom. They're in a team up called the Midnight Suns, and they also have both been Defenders, so maybe that could be the case in the future. And as far as those cancelled Netflix series go, Disney have been advised. Originally, the report was, you can't have a TV show after 2 years. Disney's lawyers have basically said, don't even start developing for 2 years. So those characters are on the shelf for a while. But at the moment, it looks like that's going to be the home for the darker characters getting their TV series, and that's interesting. And of course, The Runaways is already on Hulu, so maybe we could see them cross over, but there's a lot more characters that could possibly make it their way to Hulu, some of the darker Marvel characters. And Ghost Rider is pretty interesting one, actually, because of course he was set up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So it raised the possibility of other characters crossing over and getting their own series. But as we were talking, those shows were cancelled by Netflix. In our next story, another show was cancelled by Netflix, which, as we carry on the story, you might find out isn't that surprising. Santa Clarita Diet. Okay, I haven't watched this show, but people were really mad about this. People really liked this show. It was a popular one. It had Drew Barrymore, Timothy Olyphant. That's not a cast to be sneezed at. And it got cancelled after season 3 only premiered a month ago, and it ended on a cliffhanger. Oof, okay. What I found more interesting about that is this is sort of revealing a troubling pattern for Netflix, which is that shows more and more are not getting past 2 or 3 seasons. So this is from an article on Deadline Hollywood. It says, Netflix employs a cost-plus model, offering to pay upfront show productions fees, cost plus a premium of 30% on the cost. Even after Netflix subtracts a distribution fee, outside studios are at break-even or in positive territory from day one, versus having to deficit finance series for the first few seasons on most traditional networks. But in exchange for the upfront payments, outside studios give up the potential upside that normally comes with owning a long-running successful series, including off-network and international sales. So what they're essentially saying, and I saw there was a lot of people talking about this, is that creators at Netflix now more and more aren't getting a back end. They're getting paid at front, and it might seem like a decent offer, but it's basically, if this show is ever a success, you're not going to reap the benefit overall. Now, to be fair, this upfront model and getting a show back end successfully is rarer and rarer. But there's a lot of stuff, like a lot of shady stuff is coming out about Netflix at the moment. And it's going to be interesting if that affects things as more and more people get into the streaming game. So instead it says Netflix's deals include bump/bonuses after each season that are getting progressively bigger. While the payments are relatively modest after season 1 and a little bigger after season 2, I hear they escalate after season 3, especially for series owned by Netflix, sometimes from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, as the studio starts to pay off the show's back end for series from outside studios, which I hear costs about 20% more than their Netflix produced counterparts. I hear the built-in payment increases do not skyrocket as much, but still are bigger after season 3, season 4 and beyond. So what that means essentially is that it gets to the point for a lot of shows from Netflix that after season 3 it's too expensive, that they just don't bother paying it. So more and more, this is troubling. If you were a creator and you said, okay, I can get all this money up front, I mightn't get something in the long run, and I have to have a show that can wrap up in 3 seasons. And if you look at the amount of shows that have ended in 3 seasons, it's shocking. There you can probably count on like maybe one hand, maybe a few extra fingers after that, how many shows go beyond that on Netflix. Most of them are actually Netflix stuff that they make themselves. Looking at some of these shows, okay, when you look at the shows that have lasted long, they're shows that either began really early on Netflix, or they're kind of award favourites. So House of Cards, that was one of the staples when Netflix was getting started. Same with Orange is the New Black. And there's award hits like Unbreakable with Kimmy Schmidt that just about got out of the 3rd season. They got a 4th season. And Grace and Frankie, which I think is going into season 6 soon. Another possible reason for Grace and Frankie running so long, by the way, is that Marta Kaufman, who was a big part of Friends getting on Netflix, is a creator on that show. Another article from the Hollywood Reporter also came out that said that they basically cheat people out of royalties. And there's more details about how lately these deals are causing the end of back-end pay or upfront pay, which is making it less and less likely that new creators are going to prosper. And I'm not saying this is all Netflix. You know, it's easy to say Netflix bad, but a lot of deals are being screwed up for creators and writers in Hollywood that we're seeing at the moment. But this is something that's going to have to be looked at. I don't know if TV is a viable option for a lot of creators now, but it doesn't sound like Netflix are that new haven as much as it could have seemed even a couple of months ago. Because it sounds like there's people that, first of all, there's certain cost-cutting measures that are making it difficult. And it sounds like you're not necessarily going to have a show that has a great deal of legacy. Now, on the other hand, of course, there's shows that wouldn't have got anywhere if it wasn't for Netflix. That show You was, of course, basically hinged entirely on its success on Netflix. It flopped on regular TV. I don't know. It's, as someone who, of course, loves television and would love to find a show, if I'm starting a show now on Netflix, it's going to be hard to get invested if it's going to just end in 3 seasons. Because if you have to just deal with shows that are getting prematurely cancelled, what's the point? And of course, the other aspect is a lot of these shows now, they cannot be picked up elsewhere. That's the problem with that show American Vandal. It had 2 seasons. They can't shop it anywhere because they have an exclusivity deal with Netflix. 2 years' time, no one's going to care about that. And of course, we're seeing it with the Marvel characters as well. So I don't know. I would keep an eye on any show that's about to air its 3rd season, because it could be the last one. I don't know. It's interesting these times we live in about streaming deals and how often that can change, and whether or not it is, even though it is the future, things are basically probably going to just change back to the way they were. And at the moment, it's not exactly as prosperous or as exciting as it was when, you know, the kind of golden age of streaming, is, like a lot of people are saying, is essentially gone as all these rights deals expire. Like, we have a lot of talk on Netflix about The Office at the moment. The American Office and Parks and Rec and Friends apparently account for more viewership than anything else Netflix have ever made. Now, all those shows are owned by NBC Universal, so they're going to start their own streaming service. Those are going to be gone. So are people going to stay around when Netflix is just original content? And if like, obviously Netflix like ending a show at 3 seasons as well, because it means look how big our catalogue is. I don't know. Interesting times, but well, let's move on. Cast Podcast, our other segment, talking about casting news in Hollywood. There are some really interesting ones here. There is one really strange one that I can't wait to get to. So, Leonardo DiCaprio is set to star with Guillermo del Toro for Nightmare Alley, which is pretty much a match made in heaven. I don't believe DiCaprio's made a film since The Revenant, when he won his Oscar, and Guillermo del Toro, of course, just came off his Oscar-winning film, The Shape of Water. So that's a great match. It's based on a book, and it draws a lot of comparisons to Todd Browning's Freaks, that infamous 30s film. Set in a sort of carnival atmosphere that seems obviously perfect for Guillermo del Toro. That kind of carny horror vibe is perfect for him. And the plot involves this character who basically scams people. He's like a spiritualist in this carnival with the help of, these are not my words, this is a description I got off Amazon, bimbo, accomplice. And it sounds like eventually, he might screw him out of the money and that sort of way. It was made a film before. I don't know how faithful that film was to the book, but the book has got a lot of, in retrospect especially, it's got a lot of praise. So it sounds like a perfect match for Guillermo del Toro. And to have Leonardo DiCaprio on board makes this all the more interesting. I want to see what gets him into a sort of horror-ish film like this. So obviously that film's going to be pretty fantastic, hopefully. Another film that's likely to be frightening is the live-action Tom and Jerry movie, which has cast Chloe Grace Moretz. She's going to be working in a hotel that Jerry the mouse is in. And she gets Tom, of course, to try to get rid of Jerry. Alright then, that could work. That works as a cartoony premise, but it's so weird having this being live action as well. But who knows. More casting. We got some casting for James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. 2 people have joined the cast. Daniela Melchior is playing the Ratcatcher. We talked about this a few weeks back. The Ratcatcher is generally a male role, but we heard they were going to change the genders on this character, and they've cast something of a newcomer. I believe she's a Portuguese actress. So, it's nice to get some fresh blood in there. And a character like the rat catcher, I think they're not really attached to their gender that much, so it's not a big deal. More notably, I guess, because this actor is someone that is no stranger to comic book movies, is David Dastmalchian. He's going to play the Polka Dot Man. He's been in The Dark Knight. I think his name was Thomas Schiff, this kind of mental patient that Aaron Eckhart's character threatens to kill down the sewers. And he's also in Ant-Man and the Wasp, the Baba Yaga guy, one of the ex-cons. I'm sure we're going to hear more casting with this movie soon. Very, very interesting cast he's lined up. I like that these are actors that are either unknown or like David Dalmastian, I'm butchering his name, one more time, David Dastmalchian. That's what I'm going with. David Dastmalchian. Okay. He's a fantastic actor, but he's got a bit of a strange look. That means he always gets certain parts, or that he's not going to get a prominent part in a lot of movies. So I'm glad to see that he's getting a role here that I think he'd probably get a decent amount of screen time in. At least if we're led to believe this is something of a reboot, even though they were like, it's a reboot, it's completely new, and then they were like, and all these characters are coming back. It's like, alright, wouldn't be a reboot, but alright. And we have another actor, actually, who's joined a different project, not Suicide Squad, but he was rumoured for Suicide Squad, and that is John Cena, and this is amazing. So, this was announced by Vin Diesel. I have no idea what... Is Vin Diesel always this weird, this philosophical? I don't even... it sounds like he's starting a religion, okay? This was on Instagram, and he did this in a video. So maybe it just doesn't translate well to text. I watched the video, it didn't make things any clearer. He seems like a very spiritual guy, apparently. I listen to this, okay? This is a statement, okay? And I'll do my best, Vin Diesel. He goes, "Thank you, Pablo." Yeah, you're thinking straight away, who the fuck is Pablo? Which is what I was like, what? We come back to that. I'll explain. He goes, "Always thinking fast. Iconic." And he goes on. And he says, "Pablo, every blue moon another soldier for the fight for truth." And then he just says, "Came by Toretto Gym." And John Cena's just there, and John Cena waves. And he just says, "All love, always." What the hell is he smoking? What? Okay, let me translate that. We need a Vin Diesel translator. He voices Groot, and you thought you couldn't understand what Groot is saying. I understand him more than I understand Vin Diesel. Okay, Pablo is Paul Walker. Okay, so I guess he thinks Paul Walker is overlooking him and the Fast franchise, because I guess if there is some spiritual realm, Paul Walker has nothing better to do than oversee a film franchise he's not in anymore. So he says, "Thank you, Paul Walker. I'm always thinking fast and iconic. Another soldier for the fight for truth." Has he seen any of the Fast and Furious films? The fight for truth. He thanks Paul Walker again. Yeah, John Cena's in Fast 9. That's what we're taking away from it. Filming is meant to start April 20th. That was what the reported date was. So I guess it's filming now. And of course, they got rid of The Rock, so they're like, get another wrestler. Maybe this means we could get The Rock versus John Cena for a third time. Thrice in a lifetime. Odd man, Vin Diesel. I don't get it, but it was the most entertaining thing I've ever seen. Maybe this did start filming on the 20th of April. That's the only reason I can explain how Vin Diesel sounds like he's so damn high. That was a performance art, man. I mean, wow. Another soldier in the fight for truth. Thank you, Pablo. That was in the franchise where The Rock recently hand-guided a missile. Just to be clear, the fight for truth. That's what it involves. Oh, bless Vin Diesel. Well, speaking of Fast and Furious, we actually have a bit of sad news. The director of Too Fast and Furious, but we won't turn with that brush. He has quite a fantastic filmography, and that's John Singleton has passed away. Now, when you look through his filmography, he had Poetic Justice featuring Tupac, Shaft with Samuel L. Jackson from 2000, which is really, my understanding, a lot of people have gone back to that and reassessed it and find it to be quite a strong film. Four Brothers, which I haven't seen, but I know a lot of people love that movie. Probably most notably Boys in the Hood. So he directed all of those movies. He's the youngest director ever nominated for Best Director. I mean, he was nominated for Best Director at 24 for his first film, which is amazing. But even more distinct is that he was the first African American ever nominated for Best Director. And of course, it's a great loss for film, but to the African American community, especially in the film community, it's very, very sad. He always really showed that lifestyle and that viewpoint, and not in a negative light, in a positive point, which is something that a lot of filmmakers didn't do back then. You know, Boys in the Hood is tragic. It doesn't glamorize that lifestyle, which a lot of people were guilty of then. And it's really a shocking loss. I mean, as I said, he was the youngest director, and that was back at Boys in the Hood. He was only 51 years old, which is a young age to go, really, in modern times. It's a great loss. He was a fantastic director, and he'd also worked on television series. Snowfall on FX is his, about, I believe it's cocaine on the streets of African American neighborhoods. So again, he was a really strong representation for African Americans in film. And when you see the reaction to his death, you know, Samuel L. Jackson sharing his thoughts, calling him a brother, I believe. Jordan Peele calling him an inspiration. Spike Lee, they really worked together. Spike Lee was a great inspiration to him, and it sounds like that went both ways. So really a sad loss, unfortunately. We haven't had to cover many deaths on the podcast so far. And unfortunately, you know, he was a really strong voice for independent filmmakers and for the African American community in general. And if you've never seen Boys in the Hood, you should check it out. It's a fantastic movie. Ice Cube, Cuba Gooding Jr. It's an amazing movie, and if there is anything to be said about a loss of that magnitude, is that he leaves behind quite a legacy and some great work. So rest in peace, John. Alright, let's try to lighten the mood a little bit. Let's mock our betters with quick hits, where we go through a little bit of news, but really we're just pointing the finger and laughing at our betters. Okay, first up, 3 from Hell, Rob Zombie's follow-up to The Devil's Rejects, has been given an R rating. In other news, soft drinks have been found to be bad for your health, suicide can result in your death, and I'm going to die alone. Wait, what was that? What was the last one? Sony Pictures have acquired the rights of a soon-to-debut musical inspired by the music of Britney Spears, titled Once Upon a One More Time. The plot is that Cinderella, Snow White and other fairy tales princesses gather for their book club when a rogue fairy godmother drops the feminine mystique into their corseted laps, spurring a royal revelation. The musical features such Spears hits as Oops, I Did It Again, Lucky, Circus and Toxic. While the musical may already have a title, the title for the film has not really yet been confirmed, which means there's still time for them to title it It's Britney, bitch! Game of Thrones cinematographer Fabian Wagner has rushed to the defence of the show's latest episode, The Long Night, after complaints from fans that it was too dark, stating, I know it wasn't too dark because I shot it. To which I respond, I know it was too dark because I tried to fucking watch it. Man, that Game of Thrones episode is taking its licks, isn't it? Well, I might talk about Game of Thrones in a couple of weeks when we're near the ending of the show, I guess. But until then, let's talk about trailer trash. There was a lot of trailers out this week, at least 4 of them, so we better get through these quite quick. I want to start first with Men in Black International, which, not a great trailer. It's very disappointing. For me, every trailer since the first trailer for this movie has been a bit bland. And I think this one is especially bad. We get a bit of Tessa Thompson's backstory, which is interesting enough. Basically, her parents got their mind wiped and she didn't, and she kind of hunts them down. Which is, you know, new. That could work. Absolutely. But what really just, grinds me in this trailer is Kumail Nanjiani's CGI character. I'm not gonna like it. I can tell already. It's so annoying. Like, Kumail Nanjiani is good, and he's funny, and I like him, but he can come across as very smug, and it looks like they're playing that character with that smugness, and it's just annoying. I don't know if that's going to work. And if he's meant to be the comedic relief, and he's annoying me just from the trailers, that's not good. I don't know. Hopefully it'll come off a bit better in the movie. I don't know if the action in this movie is going to be very good either. Didn't really show off that anything that's that exciting. We didn't even get that much more plot, really. So I don't know. It feels like a movie where the comedy isn't good for the comedy part of the movie to hold up, and the action isn't good enough for the action part to hold up. So I don't know. That doesn't make me very excited. And this was a film that I was excited at the start of the year, but it's really gone down in my estimation since all these trailers came out. So this could just be a very uninteresting film. And let's say something as well. And I find this I call this a conspiracy theory, alright? I think it was 2 years ago when The Mummy came out with Tom Cruise. They had a trailer that came out accidentally that featured none of the music or effects. In other words, it was like raw sound. So you had that famous Tom Cruise scream going like, ah, 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 which was hilarious and everyone laughed. Now this week, a Men in Black trailer dropped without sound effects and without the music. And there was nothing offensively bad about it. It definitely wasn't as funny as the other one. It didn't get a lot of traction. I get the feeling that was marketing. I think they figured we might get a bit more traction if we put out a funny version of the trailer, and it's like, whoa, we messed up. It didn't work if it was that, but I think that's what it was. I also heard a rumoured early reaction to this and it wasn't positive, which is a shame, but I don't know, we'll have to wait until we see more. Hopefully they can pull it together, or at least just make a fun summer movie, because I feel bad for Chris Hemsworth. He's never really had a good project outside of the Marvel movies, so I'd love if he actually got something decent that worked. Whether or not this is it, that's very hard to say judging off these trailers. Another trailer for a movie that I was looking forward to, and I still am, it's the Godzilla King of Monsters trailer. I'm so sick of these trailers with their juxtaposed music. You know what I mean? It's just lazy at this point. So this one has like Somewhere Over the Rainbow from The Wizard of Oz, I think it is. And it's like, oh, that's this beautiful song, but oh, how horrible is this world? Stop that. Get over it, alright? We don't need that for every film now. It seems like more and more they're doing it, and I think they're trying to make a film seem profound. But let's not forget, this is a Godzilla movie. Slow your roll of it there, guys, alright? Now, visually, this movie does look pretty amazing. There's a lot of monsters. They mentioned at one point there's 17 of them. I don't think there's going to be 17 in this movie. That would certainly be overkill. I think it's that there's 17 like that they know about in the world. But yeah, the amount of monsters in this is absolutely insane. Hoping that like they just manage to balance them well. King Ghidorah is the leader of the look of them. He's kind of the alpha of the pack. And it looks like him and Godzilla's fight is going to be the main thing, which makes sense. Ghidorah is like one of the main monsters in the Godzilla universe. And I have to say, Godzilla's design in this is fantastic. It looks perfect. That one where he rises out of the water is great. But then they ruin it with some of the dialogue. Oh god, I'm all for cheesy dialogue. It doesn't bother me that much. But this line, when someone goes, oh my god, Zilla. That's awful. That's really, really bad. Come on now. I also don't know about the colour palette of the movie. The colour coding in this is like, I think they're going for stylish, but it really just looks kind of cheap. Like it has that common thing we always see where it's like orange and blue contrasting against each other. It doesn't really work. It's like turned up to a nauseating degree. Looks like it'd give you a headache. I'm a little bit worried about the trailer for a few reasons. First of all, I've had my fingers burnt with Godzilla's trailers before. Like the last Godzilla movie I thought sucked. And the trailers for it were amazing. And I totally missold the movie. I don't think this film is missold. I think more of the problem with it might have with the trailer is that it seems like it's all money shot. You know, I'm kind of hoping that we're not getting everything from the movie in this trailer. Or that this is all the last act of the movie or anything. They have a lot of emphasis on the human cast. I mean, that was always going to be the case considering the cast. They have a very good cast, to be fair. But in monster movies, sometimes they overuse it, and I hope there's not as much emphasis on them fighting the monsters as it appears. You know, where it's like, we're going to have to fight back. We're going to have to fight with Godzilla. And then it's like, I'm shooting the monsters. It's like, yeah, the army fight every Godzilla movie, and they fail miserably. Like, come on. Give us something a bit stronger to hold on to. And it looks like there will be some more emotional elements with Millie Bobby Brown's character. So hopefully this pans out, and we really don't have long to wait. It's out the end of May. It's a really packed summer. Movie season has definitely begun. I like Michael Dougherty's other work. He did Krampus and what was the one he did before that? Trick or Treat. And he does a good balance, cheesy and fun. So I'm hoping that he can translate that here. It looks good, but I'm a little bit cautious of the trailer, that's all. Then we have the hottest movie of the early 2000s, Gemini Man. Wow, Will Smith doesn't even look that different. The effect they gave him is they basically changed his hair and gave him an uncanny valley of a face, which looks awful. It looks like a John Woo film, actually. It seems like something like Face Off, but it's Ang Lee, so I guess it's going to be more profound, or really pushing that angle. It's young Will Smith trying to kill old Will Smith. And all right, that could work. The trailer didn't really blow me away. It looks like this could easily have just been a standard blockbuster film or just a straight to DVD film, but they were like, hey, we got Will Smith and Ang Lee. They've been trying to make this movie quite a while, I believe, as well. One thing I have to say, the music in this trailer is absolutely awful. It's really bad. I can't even remember now. I blocked it from my memory, but it's just like this weird techno, and and they keep repeating like things where it's like, oh, see, because this is like the theme of the movie. Cut that out. Music and trailers, man, they need to properly revamp that, because everything has an Inception bong, a juxtaposed music like I just mentioned, or annoying techno where it's like, look how clever we're being because it mentions something relevant to the movie. It's like, come on, don't do that. Aside from that, I'm guessing he's gonna find out what made the older Will Smith character so jaded. The dialogue is not good, but that's a trailer. I mean, it's hard to come down on dialogue too much, especially in the first trailer, where it's sort of like really stilted and really just pushing the idea of like, did you see that was an old Will Smith and I'm the young Will Smith? See, we're the same character. Ooh. Alright then. Yeah, it's not a time travel movie, it's not like Looper. It seems to be about clones. The action in this wasn't great either, which is kind of a letdown. I think hopefully that's just because this is an early trailer. Maybe we can get a bit more of an action-packed second trailer, because this of course is probably just a teaser trailer, but there we go. Now we come to the most controversial talked about trailer of the week. I should also mention, actually, before we get to that, there was a Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw movie trailer out like last week that I didn't even mention, just because it was more of the same. It was a good trailer. We know what this movie is now. You don't need to sell us on it anymore. I'm in. And that's all you need to know, really. But one that we're not quite sold on, or anyone is sold on, is the Sonic the Hedgehog trailer. I'm slightly ashamed to admit that at the start of this I was like, oh my god, this is great. And the main thing that sold me, they had the rings on the Paramount logo instead of stars. I was like, brilliant. That's a creative idea. Maybe they've really thought this through. That lasted for about 5 seconds. It looks so cheap. It looks like a fan film as well. And all this CGI design on Sonic is, oh my god, it's as bad as we expected it to be. Like, I remember them, like, they put out a poster for this and it was just Sonic's muscular legs and people were taking the piss out of it, and they're like, clearly they didn't want to show what Sonic looked like. So I was like, hey, maybe they're taking that on board. Maybe they're going to put a bit more effort into this and make it work. If they did any work on it since then, I'd hate to see what it looked like beforehand. It's awful. The eyes look bad. They're like separated, and that would be fine. But it's like a weird humanoid thing. It doesn't work. And I've seen people fix it online by joining the eyes together and making them like the original design, and it looks way better. It would have worked perfect with, like, if you just given him Sonic's eyes and face and kept the rest of the stuff, it probably would have been fine. And they gave him weird human teeth. And like, I think Sonic does have teeth, but when they do it, it's like a cartoony grin. But it's like individual teeth. Like, it's terrifying. I said it looks like someone face swapped the annoying orange. It's really off-putting. Now, that being said, I have to applaud them to a certain degree. This was a bit an easy movie to just make a CGI revamp of and basically just give us what we already have in the video games. Like, they did that Ratchet and Clank movie a couple of years ago, and it basically just looked like a Ratchet and Clank cutscene. So I was like, why would you see that? I could just play the game. You have to applaud the absolute balls it takes to make this your Sonic movie. This is absolute insanity. They made a weird humanoid Sonic that's an alien. That's something no one seems to be freaking out about, by the way. He is an alien because he says, I'm here to save your planet. So presumably it's not his planet. And he's like, what? He looks weird. He's seemingly got weird superpower kind of things. Because at one point he throws a ring and it turns into like a Doctor Strange portal. And they got Jim Carrey back from the 90s, basically, because he's not doing serious stuff anymore. Now he's weird psycho Jim Carrey playing Dr. Robotnik. And at first I was like, oh, they're going a bit more reserved, maybe. And then we see him properly Robotnik with a crazy mustache. And I was like, Jesus. It looks awful. And everyone is saying, yeah, it looks awful, but you know what? It's the kind of awful where I kind of can't wait to see it. Where I'm like, that is so bad, I have to see what that... This might be a time where you just laugh at how bad a movie is. I don't know, it's psychopathic that they ever tried to do this. The humour doesn't work either. It's that's what I mean. Okay, Sonic is a kid's video game, right? And you have all these adults that grew up with Sonic that are like, what? This is my Sonic and all that. But when you look at what they did to this trailer, right? So first of all, the humour doesn't work, as I said. There's a weird moment where he's just standing there being like, oh, I got this many steps today. Alright. They basically made him Quicksilver when he's just running around freezing time, essentially. Smashing missiles. You're like, alright, that's odd enough. Then we have a really badly timed, maybe poorly executed, odd. Like, if this is going to be a kids' film, they put a kidnapping joke in there, where he's like, "Oh, what's in the bag? It's a baby. Oh, it's okay. It's not my baby." What? That's a bit of a weird joke. Hey, it's okay. Let's kidnap the baby and put him in a bag. Not to mention, James Marsden's character is a cop. Is he that dumb to say that? Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot that one of the most baffling things. Like, first of all, I'll tell you this before I get to that. Jim Carrey is going to steal the show. Even if this movie's a mess, he looks like he's giving it his all and having fun with it. So that might be fun. We haven't seen a Jim Carrey role where he just swings over the fences in a while. But what is entirely odd is the choice of music in this. Coolio's Gangster's Paradise. And it's like a weird loop where they keep playing like the intro where it's like over and over again. And then we do get a bit of the lyrics, but just to be clear, right? What are they trying to say with that song? They're like, oh, Sonic is gangster. That Sonic is not... First of all, original Sonic isn't gangster. That Sonic definitely isn't gangster. That CGI monstrosity is definitely not gangster. Remember Coolio was like complaining about Weird Al Yankovic parodying a song. And like, this is where his song is now. Oh, this got absolutely shredded by the internet. Rightfully so. It looks awful. But I have that morbid curiosity. This is going to be a car crash that I'm just going to be like, oh, let's have a look there. It's going to be a mess. It looks absolutely shocking. But I'm so curious to see how it pans out, because if that's the way they want you to see the movie, imagine the stuff that's in the movie that they don't want you to see. Jesus Christ. Anyway, moving on to our box office, which, as you would expect, was just dominated by the Avengers. Let's start with some of the other ones before we get to the top. Hellboy. I don't even know why I'm reporting on this. No one cares about Hellboy. The episode I reviewed Hellboy, I think, did someone with worst numbers so far, and no one cares about Hellboy. And that really shows. It lost a lot of theatres to Avengers. It lost 2,376 theatres this week. This is its third week. It made 354,000. It's in 14th place. 21 million domestically. This had a 50 million budget. That should have been an easy, tidy sum to come back to it. It should have been easy to get that. I think they're going to pull this from theatres. I think Lionsgate or whoever's going to come in and just kill it. Rightfully so, because it's just dying a slow, awful death. Missing Link lost a lot of theatres as well this week to Avengers. It made an extra million. It's made 15 million so far. You know, it's a shame to see them not do as good as they could, because of course they like to make great stuff, but they never really get many hits, unfortunately. Pet Sematary lost a lot of theatres as well, and that's what you will notice with most of the things. The box office is all over the place, because basically every theatre was like, we need more screenings of Avengers. Pet Sematary went from 7th place to 8th place, not that bad. Dumbo stayed where it was, 47% drop. Shazam lost 500 theatres, 5.5 million. Shazam deserves so much better. It's kind of a shame that it hasn't gone the way it should. I think it should be doing a lot better. But The Curse of La Llorona, which was number 1 last week, lost 70%, roughly, 69.5. 8 million. Again, that had budgeted 9 million, so that's not bad. Captain Marvel is hanging in there pretty well. I said last week that it managed to basically climb a few places and make decent money, and I guess people wanted to see this before they saw Endgame, or People couldn't get into Endgame, they saw Captain Marvel instead, because it made 8.312 million, up to second place, which is crazy. It's on its 8th week of release and it's in second place, which is impressive. I mean, there's no bones about it. It's actually made more per theatre average than any of the movies, aside from Avengers, obviously. When we now, let's talk about Endgame. Wow, the box office. We all knew this movie was going to be big. Obviously, no one could have predicted this level of success. This is an unprecedented box office record. I don't know when we'll see a movie this big again. Even Marvel won't get there again, I think. So let's just look. We'll look at a few of the records it broke in a minute. For the record, but it apparently broke 144 records this weekend. Domestically, this made $357.1 million in its opening weekend in America. That's a 76,000 theatre average, which is insane. Let's just run through a few of these records, okay? Had the widest opening, okay? First, so that means, in other words, it's been in more theatres than any movie in America ever. Largest Friday opening and single day, it was previously held by Star Wars. It made 156.7 million on Friday. It made 60 million on Thursday, which was 3 million more. That's like the preview screenings. Largest Saturday, it beat Infinity War. Largest Sunday, it beat Infinity War. As you see with a lot of these, it broke Star Wars and Avengers, the previous Avengers movies records for the most part. The domestic opening weekend, it nearly beat it by $100 million. I mean, and when I say nearly beat it, I think there's like a $500,000 gap between them. Infinity War set 257.69, so that was a record. This finished the weekend with 357 million, which is, like, first of all, that's a 3-hour movie, so it's longer than Infinity War, and it beat it by 100 million. There was talk at the weekend, they were like, do you think this can make 300 million? I don't know. It smoked past that. It's the number one movie market share ever. 90% of the box office this weekend went to that. Highest per theatre average ever. As I said, 75,000 per theatre. Last time it made 59. I think that was the last record, 59,982. And that was in less theatres. I mean, largest April opening, spring opening, PG-13 opening, largest 3-day gross, biggest weekend overall, fastest to 100 million, fastest to 150 million, fastest to 200, 250, 300, 350, all the way through. The international opening record, right? Just imagine this now. The previous record holder on this was the Fate of the Furious, which is, like, what? But anyway, 443.15 million. That was the record for an international opening of a movie. This opened with 859 million worldwide. As in outside of America, international, 859 million. So, nearly exactly 400 million over the record. Which is just, now, to be fair, it was helped by the fact that it opened in China the same weekend, but a lot of films have had that, and that's insane. That's what I mean. We won't see a record, or we won't see a film perform this big for a long time again. Overall, this film made 1.2 billion in its first weekend, which is absolutely crazy. So, what we're really looking at now, we're not looking at just how big it did this weekend. We want to see where it can go. It broke a lot of records for Star Wars Force Awakens, so the question most people are looking at is, can it beat Force Awakens for the biggest domestic gross ever? To do that, it would have to get over 900 and something million, I think. Could it make $1 billion domestically? That's one of the questions. The other question that we have, of course, is where is this going to stand in the worldwide box office of all time? Obviously, number one is Avatar. I think Avatar is 2.7 something billion. Titanic is below that. I think Infinity War tapped out with 2.1 billion. So the real question now is, does this have the legs to get to those two spots? It'll be really difficult for it to get to Avatar, because Avatar was boosted by 3D sales. And of course, it also came out in Christmas. So it had legs then. The legs of this could get hurt by Pikachu. At least. But at the moment, I mean, the other issue, some people are speculating that it could be front loaded because people just rush to the cinemas because they didn't want to get it spoiled. Maybe people won't return. I'm going to see it again, at least once. I'm sure a lot of people will, but just to, like I said, this is history. I don't know when. I can't even think of a property that would be this big again. I don't even know if Marvel could ever get that high again. Not for a while, anyway. That is insane. Anyway, after all that said, I'll try to do a hack headline. The whole world assembles at cinemas to see Avengers Endgame. There you go. I haven't seen anyone be creative with the headlines. I think most people were just shocked at how big the number was, which is fair enough. Alright, let's look at what else is coming out this week that we can watch. I don't know if there's going to be much as far as a film that can get any bit of ground because, again, a lot of people, I'm even hearing cinemas complain. They're saying we just can't keep up with the demand here. We don't have enough time to heat the popcorn. There's too many people here. We don't have enough screenings. People are having to stay later because they have to work. We can't pay overtime. It's just insane. So when it comes to films, some of these films are also going to be affected in that they mightn't get a decent shot at screens. There was one movie this week, I can't remember what it's called. It's called something Colour, I can't remember. It was apparently a decent enough movie. And at the start of the week, when they were analysing the box office, it took them a bit of time. They were like, we don't know is our movie in cinemas still. Because they lost screens. So many screens that they were like, we don't know if it's... Come back to us for the numbers because we don't know how many screens we even had this weekend. So for these three films I'm going to highlight that are coming out this weekend, I don't know if they're going to stand a chance. But we have a psychological horror film called The Intruder, starring Michael Ealy and Megan Good. They buy their dream house but realise that the previous owner, played by Dennis Quaid, plans to take it back, which is a decent premise. I haven't seen any reviews for this yet. But again, I don't know how these films are going to fare with Endgame. You obviously can talk about counter-programming, but I'm not sure if it's going to make a difference. Long Shot, this is the one with, that used to be called Flarsky, which was like, oh, that was a good name. It doesn't tell us anything about the movie, but it was less generic than Long Shot. So this is like I think it's like a presidential hopeful, Charlize Theron. So she's like the professional one, and she hires an old friend from, I think, high school, and he used to have a crush on her to be her scriptwriter for her presidential run. So obviously it's this whole, she's this together professional person, and he's this scruffy loser, blah, blah, blah. And they'll both learn lessons, and they'll probably fall in love, and, you know. I haven't really seen anything that sells me on this movie. I didn't really know what it was when they first started talking. I thought it was like kind of a more Seth Rogen comedy. It's more of a rom-com. But apparently it's quite a good one. So if you need a bit more love in your life instead of Avengers, that's one you can do. And then we have Ugly Dolls, which is based on the toy line of Ugly Dolls, which really they're not that ugly, but a bit harsh. I guess it's just marketing. This poor release strategy for this. I don't think this is going to do well at all. I think it's going to just bomb straight away. Most people don't even know it's out. But anyway, television, we have a few things. Very depressing week on television. Both of the shows here I'm going to highlight are HBO. So we have a documentary called At the Heart of Gold, Inside the USA Gymnastics Scandal. That's not going to be an easy one to watch. Probably will be quite good, but it's not going to be a pleasant thing to watch, of course. It's going to be airing on Friday on HBO. Also on HBO, airing on Monday, is Chernobyl. This is getting a lot of good reviews. It's apparently a very emotional one. It's only a mini-series. What I found very odd was the creator behind this is Craig Mazin. And I was like, where do I recognise that name from? And you look at this guy's resume, and it's shocking. He co-wrote the Hangover sequels and wrote for Scary Movie 3 and 4. And here he has this really tense, emotional, dramatic miniseries, apparently. It's starring Jared Harris and Stellan Skarsgård. Begins on Monday. Yeah, really positive stuff for this. So if you want to check that out, again, it's probably a bit of emotional, a bit sad, but sometimes that's what good television is, you know. Netflix, quite a few things coming to Netflix, actually. We have Dead to Me. This is like a comedy drama about two widows, played by Christine Applegate and Linda Cardellini. I believe it's the people behind Two Broke Girls. So your mileage may vary depending on that. I haven't seen any reviews for it yet. That's all I will say. Tuca and Bertie. This is not a spin-off to BoJack Horseman, I believe, but the people, or at least one of the people from BoJack Horseman, I think one of the animators, is working on it, so it has a very similar visual style. The friendship between two 30-year-old bird women who live in the same apartment building. Tuca, a cocky, carefree toucan, and Bertie, an anxious, daydreaming songbird. So it's presumably in the BoJack Horseman universe, but I don't know, is technically a spin-off of what story is with it. Yeah, haven't any reviews for this, but if you like BoJack Horseman, I'm sure this could be right up your alley. And the last one, this is getting a different release depending where you live. Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile. This is the Ted Bundy biopic we've spoken about before with Zac Efron. The reviews for it were a little bit mixed. Good reviews for Efron, and of course Ted Bundy is getting a lot of talk lately after the Bundy tapes as well. So, in America at least, it's going up on Netflix on Friday. Now, in the UK, anywhere with Sky Television, they have the rights to it. So it'll probably go up on Sky if you have Sky in your country on Friday. So regardless, this movie's out Friday if you want to check it out. So yeah, those are the things that to keep an eye on this week. But before we do anything else, let's talk about what I saw this week and what pretty much everyone in the world seemingly saw, and that is Avengers Endgame. Alright, I'm going to start without spoilers. There probably won't be a lot to say without spoilers because this is a very spoilerish movie, and that's the first thing I'll say. Kudos to Disney and Marvel, and I think the internet in general actually. Okay, so first off, the marketing for this movie, we were talking about how it was only going to be from the start of the movie. That's pretty much true. There is a few snips towards maybe the third act in the trailers, but for the most part a lot of this was really early on in the movie. So I mean, what a refreshing take, because it's very rare that we actually see a trailer that doesn't spoil the film. And this is the opposite extreme where they really restricted what we saw. So, well done to Disney and Marvel for that, because I think that's what made people even more excited for that. And the other thing I will say is that there was a massive leak for this before the film came out, and I only looked up the leak what it was after, but it wasn't like, oh, this is one scene from the movie. It was like major bits from throughout the film. And overall, the internet, I think, has been very good about not spoiling this movie, which is really different for a change. So, again, I guess good work all around. It's nice to have a film that I wasn't spoiled for anyway. And a lot of people seem to have been able to see unspoiled, which is nice for a change. Fantastic. Okay, so I will talk non-spoilery stuff first. I'll put a time code when I start talking spoilers, but of course I'll give steady warning in here as well. Alright? So, Avengers Endgame, let's talk. Okay, non-spoilers. It's very tricky to know what you can say with non-spoilers. But what I will say is that this is meant to be a culmination of 11 years of films, over 20 films, I think it's 22. And the biggest compliment you can pay it is that it feels complete. It feels like an ending. It feels like it, if you've watched these up to a point, it will pay off for you. There's a lot of references in there to past films, not to a degree where it's inaccessible, but it is very rewarding if you have prior knowledge, because there's lines, callbacks, and characters and all that make this a rewarding experience if you've been committed to this whole journey, which is a really good thing to say, because especially with something that's gone on for this long and has this many plot threads and characters, tying it together and making it feel like an ending seems almost impossible. But the fact that they did it is impressive. The plot is a bit more scattered than Infinity War. It's not as clean cut as it. Not that that's a bad thing. I think it's very ambitious in what it does. As far as the characters, there's a few changes that might be maybe disappointing, but again, I can't give away any spoilers to some people. They mightn't enjoy it. It feels like, though, for the characters that are left, they each got a moment to shine, and like a lot of the Avengers movies, some of the best moments come in just them interacting with each other. So it is very refreshing in that regard. The action, I think if you're going in expecting a lot of action, you might be a little bit disappointed. There is, of course, action in the movie, but a bit less so than some of the other movies, which might be a letdown. Anything else I can say? It's an emotional movie. There are moments that are, quite touching. I will say everyone's saying they cried. I didn't cry during this movie, There was at least a time or two where I came close, and I can talk about that in spoilers. Yeah, it's again, this is this is one of the trickier movies to review because the plot has been so guarded that you really can't say much. And again, I think that's a good thing. Just makes it a rather tricky film to review. The characters are good. The action, when it's there, is very strong. I don't think the plot is as tight as the last movie, but as something that is meant to be a culmination of this whole universe up to this point, it is satisfying, and that is the biggest compliment you can pay, because it really seems impossible. I mean, there hasn't really been an instance I can think of, I don't think there is one, of a franchise that's gone on this long with this many films and that it's managed to come to a conclusion. Conclusion, of course, in quotation marks, because obviously it's not the end, but they managed to feel give us a sense of closure and make it feel like a finale of at least this saga or this age of movies. And it's interesting to speculate on what will come next. But really, that's about all I can say. In non-spoilers, I thought this was a great movie. There was moments where I was grinning from ear to ear, like a child, and that's impressive that it got me to feel like that. There was moments where I was quite emotional and sad. There was moments where you just cheered. I mean, I would say that this is probably the best experience I've ever had in a cinema. I went to a midnight screening of it, and people cheered, they clapped, they ate it up, and it was apparently not an isolated incident. It sounds like that's the case all over the place, and that might be a thing in America. It's not really a thing here in Ireland. Maybe at some of these midnight screenings, but I think it's a real testament to what the Russos have pulled off here. It's a movie that shows a fantastic understanding of its characters, and the fact that it manages to give all those characters a moment, even though they're living in a world now that's so radically changed since the beginning of this whole universe. It's impressive. Everyone has seemingly failed at these big universes except for Marvel. And the trickiest part, as much as it was tricky to get it up and running and intertangle it and plot all these intricate plot points and crossovers, bringing it to an end is always going to be the hardest part. And that they managed to do that at all is amazing. So that's all I can say in non-spoiler. So from here on out, it is spoiler. So if you haven't seen the movie, well, I'm guessing if you haven't seen the movie, you have no interest in seeing it, because the whole world has seen the movie now. But from here on out, it's going to be spoilers. So I'll put in a little sound beep here, and after that beep, we're getting all spoilerish. Okay, here we go. Okay, this is a spoiler section. If you got here by accident, I would say you have a few seconds until I get really spoilerish. I actually, when I came out of this movie, I was really concerned about how to review it. Because for one, you have the non-spoiler aspect, which, what can you even say as far as that? Because there's so much in this movie that is dependent on spoilers to discuss. And also the fact that it's just such a massive film. I don't really know how to approach it. So I would say that this might be a bit scattered, but I'll try make it as focused as I can. This is a strange movie. I talked a minute ago about how this is not as focused, not as clean cut as Infinity War, and I think what that comes down to is that it really feels like 3 different movies. It's 3 hours long, and the first act is this world post Infinity War, and then the second act is, of course, spoilers, the time travel aspect of it, and then you have the last act, which is everyone coming back, and the end of this whole thing. So it feels like 3 different films, and that's not a bad thing. I think there are some parts that work better than others. A lot of people I've seen are not really interested in the first act, which I think is a bit odd. I think it needs to set the tone, and I enjoyed it. It has a much darker tone in the beginning, and I think that's good. Seeing our characters miserable and sad, as much as that's painful to watch at times and rather emotional, it works because it makes the stakes of the last movie more believable. Because if you just literally rewrote, like say, hey, Thanos won, and then you just go, hey, don't worry, life is alright, things worked out, that would completely undermine Infinity War. And it manages to not do that, which is rather impressive, because of course this is basically undoing all of that. So, first act, we begin, of course, with Tony in space, and probably my first gripe with the film, Captain Marvel. Okay. I enjoyed Captain Marvel's solo film. I gave it a positive review. I liked it. And one of the points that I mentioned is that this character might be overpowered. And I said that at the time, and I said, hey, I think they could possibly remedy this in Endgame. Maybe there'll be a plot point. Maybe it was just, like I said, it felt appropriate to her film because it was like that moment of self-discovery, and she figures out, oh, she's Carol Danvers, and she's realizes her full power, and that's her going binary for the first time. I think she's far too overpowered in this film. And she's unnecessarily in the film even. I think they just put her in because they were like, we'll have all the Marvel characters in, she needs to come in. She rescues Iron Man, then basically just says, I'm gone. There's other worlds where this is being affected. And I understand that. Like, it's not a bad way to write her out. But for the whole film then you're like, okay, she's coming back. When's she coming back? When is she coming back? And of course, when they were getting their ass kicked, it was like, here we go, she's about to come back. And I was terrified. I was like, are they really going to bring her back and just have her wreck house? Because the issue with that is this is a character that's barely been established that has no real link to Thanos, like the rest of them. And I remember she came back, she basically takes out Thanos' ship. It might as well have been by accident. That's how powerful she was. And the guy next to me, a guy I don't even know, just started shaking his head. And I was like, I kind of agree. The character's a bit overpowered, and I don't know. It's not a problem against the villain, I don't think necessarily, because you can make that interesting, and they do make it interesting. To be fair, when she's fighting Thanos, he takes the Power Stone, puts it in his hand, and knocks her down. But the problem is that it makes the rest of your characters look like geeks. Like, she can just do anything. She's unstoppable. Like, you had 3 characters fighting Thanos and just about keeping up with him, and then she comes and she's basically able to hold her own straight away. That feels very unearned, especially when she does it after one film. So I hope they remedy it. I was hoping that the same way I felt about Doctor Strange in his solo film, where I was like, oh, he's okay, but I kind of enjoyed him in subsequent appearances, in small appearances, in the Avengers movies especially. I really liked them. And I didn't feel that way about her. I thought she was quite snarky and cocky, and I know that's her character, but it just, how do you get invested in that character in that scenario? Like, I saw this with a friend, and he hadn't seen Captain Marvel, and he saw it and said, I don't know if I want to watch a film with that character. And I don't know. It's I hope they remedy it. I'm not very impressed with how they present her as this just unbeatable character, because that's not interesting. The same way Superman can be uninteresting because he is just all-powerful character. That's an issue with any character. If you have a character that can do anything, there's no challenge there. And I think in her solo film, the challenge was she didn't know who she was. It was a journey of self-discovery. In this film, of course, she's not going to get much time because she's just basically shoved into this film. They need to remedy that. They need to give this character limits. But moving on, it's not the end of the world. I just felt that was a weaker aspect. The moment I said, I didn't cry. I don't know what I said, but I said there was a moment that got me really bad was that one moment when Iron Man comes back from space and he sees Captain America and he just says, "I lost the kid," and it crushes you. Robert Downey Jr., this is a fantastic performance, and there are emotional moments in the film, but the ones that hit me the hardest were the ones between him and Peter. And I think that's a testament to those two actors. They have great chemistry, which, nice spoiler, I guess we won't have again, because of course Tony at the end of this movie dies. And I think a lot of people thought this was very emotional. I thought it was well done, but I thought it was too predictable. It was very obvious that was going to happen. And I'm not saying like, oh, they shouldn't have done it, because someone had to die, and I think it should have been him anyway. But it was obvious that it was going to happen, so it wasn't as emotional as it could have been. But it was very well executed. I felt it very believable the way Pepper kind of said, just now you can rest. And I wonder if we'll see any effect on that on Spider-Man Far From Home. Which, of course, I think maybe you could have him kind of struggling with Tony's death. Maybe you could have a voiceover. And then the question is, because Marvel deaths have been so, they've been reversed quite often. I mean, the plot of this is basically reversing death for a load of characters. Could we ever see him return? Because at the end credits there is that sound of... I actually left it before the end credits because I heard there wasn't a proper scene, and the sound is just him hammering armour. And some people are saying, oh, it's just a callback to First Iron Man, which is what I assume it was. A lot of people are saying, oh, well, maybe it's hinting that this character could return. I really hope not. Not for a while, anyway. And then we come to what could be another issue, and that is the time travel aspect. Because in the comics, at least, there's at least one time where they grab a Tony from a previous time and bring him to the future. Now, I don't think they'll do that, but it highlights the problem with putting time travel in your film, because it's now a sort of a do-all, end-all kind of thing. It can really negate things in the universe, and I don't know what it means. I'm not sure. I don't think we'll see much time travel again. Hopefully not for a while, because again, it can be a universe-breaking aspect, and that brings us to what some people are complaining about: the whole time travel logic of the film. I find any film you have time travel in, you can tear apart the logic of it, and if you do, there will be plot holes. Now, if I had recorded this a couple of days ago, I probably would have torn into the film a bit more, but I've thought about it, I've heard some explanations for it. I don't think it's as bad as I initially thought. So, the time travel in this, let me try to explain it. It's basically that they throw it to Back to the Future logic, in other words. So, you going back to the past and change something in the past won't affect your future, because your future is already your present. That's let me try and explain it. They more or less say that in the movie. They basically do a good job of not making you go cross-eyed like Austin Powers. It's like they brush it off. Don't think about this too hard, because it's just a bit of fun. Don't take it too seriously. That's essentially what they do. So the logic is that what they do with the time travel aspect, if you go back in time, you're not really going back in your own timeline, you're creating an alternate timeline. Now, what that means is that when they go back to get these stones, and they take the stone, they can bring objects from one timeline to another, but it won't affect the past, because it's from an alternate timeline. So that's why at the end of the film, they have to return these objects back to those timelines, so those timelines don't get messed up. Because I guess, again, they're the Avengers. They don't want to just screw up everyone's timeline. So I thought it was always going to be inevitable that we would get time travel in these Marvel movies. And I thought, as far as what... I liked it. I didn't love it, but I feel like... only because time travel is a very tricky aspect, as I said, to put into a franchise. Because now it feels like you can kind of undo a lot of stuff. And I know that they at least did a good job of kind of highlighting that you couldn't necessarily do that. But I think in other ways, they could just... I mean, look, I guess if they have this responsibility to not screw up other timelines, I guess they can't just take a character or take an object and never bring it back, etc. And then we come to what people are calling a plot hole, and I don't think it is, from what I've read now. I think I've come around to it, because I was kind of questioning as well. And again, with a lot of this stuff, you can't take it too seriously. And that's, I think, why I said it falls apart compared to Infinity War, because Infinity War was a lot tighter. This one you could pull a few threads out and maybe the whole thing would fall apart. But the whole thing with Captain America, so at the end of this film, Captain America is bringing the stones and the hammer back to their original timelines, as it were. So, in doing that, he's meant to come back, and the idea is, okay, well, it'll take a while for him to, but really, it'll only take a few seconds in our time, and he doesn't come back. And then they turn around, and Cap is sitting there on a bench, and he's an old man. And the basic idea is that he went back in time and lived his life with Peggy Carter, and until he was an old man, because he never really got the life. He got the life he was cheated out of. Now, what does that mean? Some people are saying, how can he possibly do that? That's clearly affecting the timeline. When we said we couldn't do that, if it's an alternate timeline, how did he end back in the same timeline? Okay. Here's my understanding of it, and here's what I've heard a few people explain. So, when they go back to the 70s, there's a part in this movie where they go back to the 70s, they go into a lab, and they take all these pin particles. He takes like 4 of them. Now, 4 is much more than he needs. He needs 1 for him and 1 for Tony to get back from the 70s to the modern timeline. So he has at least 2 extra. Presumably he got more to bring the stones back. So the point is that Cap has extra pin particles for time travel. Now the other thing, and I felt this wasn't really well established in the movie as well as it could have been. They have these things on their wrists, which they can use to time travel. If you see when they're in New York, when Hulk, Ant-Man, Cap and Iron Man are in New York, in that timeline, Cap and Iron Man used those things to go back to the 70s. So they can't time travel independent of the giant platform. So essentially, Cap time traveled of his own volition, and then teleported, time traveled. Oh my god, my head's going to explode. Time traveled back to the timeline he was initially from when he was an old man. I'm not saying all that logic holds up. It'll do for me. It gives us a satisfying end to our character. That I can't really complain about. I actually thought what it was going to be, because a lot of people are picking up on this now, and I kind of picked up on it straight away when it's Cap and is going in the time machine, and Bucky and Falcon are there, and Bucky kind of says like good luck or whatever. Basically he says something that gives the impression of Bucky knows he's not coming back. Now I thought what it was going to be is he was going to go back to the Soul Stone and sacrifice himself so Black Widow could live. I'm glad they didn't do that in retrospect, just because like it would have just given Cap an off-screen death, which is kind of pointless. But Captain America is still technically alive, so I guess he could possibly return. Black Widow, on the other hand, was not so lucky. That was, some people I've seen complain about the deaths in this movie, where more people should have died. Maybe that's true. Not entirely sure. I've been thinking about it, but there's still some characters that, and we know there are other characters that are going to be brought back. Vision's coming back, for sure. I think whether Black Widow will come back, I don't think she'll come back anytime soon. That was the one they made feel really definitive, because it was this whole aspect of they really pressed that button later on. But really, of the original Avengers, Cap is gone, Iron Man is gone, Black Widow is gone. That's okay with me, because like when you look at the main characters in the Avengers, the only one that really survived was Thor. Like the Hulk. Let's talk about the Hulk. I'm not really sure how to feel about him in this film, for a few reasons. Like Banner had an arc between Thor Ragnarok and this. It was like, he was always a Hulk and he could never be Banner, and then he was Banner and he could never be Hulk, and now he's a fusion of both. So there was a bit of an arc there. I just felt he was underutilized in this movie. I felt like the Russos maybe didn't know how to use him. Like he was Smart Hulk, he was Professor Hulk, whatever you want to call it. He didn't really do anything aside from that. He delivered a few laughs, and what I was disappointed was we never really got to see him be the Hulk, just wreck stuff, smash. But I really wanted that moment where he got to fight Thanos again, and it feels like he got the short end of the stick in the last battle. But it is what it is, I suppose. Hawkeye got some very good moments in this film, which is good. I always liked Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye, and I think he's got a unique kind of perspective because he is one of the few human characters. As in, he's not super powered or have a suit. So it's him and Natasha, really. And he's had a bit more grounded approach, I think. And he's always been an instant character for that, but he doesn't always get his due. But I feel like here they gave him a lot to do, and they gave him a few emotional arcs, which was good. That's a character that works, I think, and that you need to a certain point. Who else? Thor. Okay, let's talk about Thor, because I don't know how to feel about Thor either. They made him Fat Thor, which some people are really complaining about. I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it worked. People are like, oh, well, you're just shaming fat people, or I don't know if that was the case. I mean, are we going to act like if you're in a depression sometimes you don't really take care of yourself, that you drink a lot and you eat a lot and you binge yourself to excess? I mean, that's accurate in a lot of cases. And that's not shaming someone who's in that position, obviously, and that wasn't the joke. I think it was more that you were playing off the idea that this person that we imagine as this chiseled god has become overweight and a bit of a wreck. There are jokes in there, I think, but it's not like I don't think there was many jokes where I was like, hey, Thor's fat, isn't he? Ha ha. His arc in this film is a bit odd. It's a bit scattered at times. It basically is just learning to feel like he's worth it again, because he seems to take the toll a lot that it was his fault, and to a certain degree it was. I think Rocket says as much in the film, but he's basically realizing he's worthy of his hammer again in some way. That's why he manages to get it in the flashback to Thor 2, and he gets a bit of closure with his mother, and even with Jane to a certain degree. I think he kind of moves on and realizes who he is again. I don't think it's the strongest arc we've seen for this character, and I think maybe because he was such an emotional aspect of Infinity War, I kind of wanted a little bit more. But I really, being Fat Thor, it didn't make a difference by the end at all. So, it was kind of pointless. I think it was just a quick joke almost. And I guess it worked. Having Thor be this kind of wreck worked. But it didn't matter. And by the end of the film, he was basically Thor again. And that's fine. Thor has been in the comics before, this kind of burly guy. So it's not a big deal. And I suppose let's talk about the time travel stuff first, because I think even though the first act of the movie I like, it's dark and stuff, there's not much in there to talk about. It's basically just them coming to the realization of we need to use time travel. Ant-Man is back. Here's how we do it. Blah blah blah. And it's nice seeing these characters, how their lives have moved on, and some of them haven't moved on. Black Widow's a bit of a wreck. She doesn't really know what to do. She feels helpless. Captain America is staying positive, but he's just still. He's Cap. Like, through all of this, he's positive, but he knows that they failed, basically. Hawkeye is, we always knew he was going to become Ronin. And I think, again, the scenes between him and Black Widow were a highlight for me. It was really, because I felt like since we all knew it was going to be Ronin, since we knew his family was going to die, it was hard to make that work or make us get invested or emotional about it, but the scenes with Black Widow were really well done in this film. And that really grounded it a bit more. Tony, I was really impressed to a certain degree that they didn't sell that character out. They kept very true to who that character is. When he comes back from space, he is arrogant. He gets up in Cap's face. And that is Tony Stark. That he lashes out at people. He has a certain... he's an admirable character in a lot of ways, but we also have to realise that he's a pain. And he's an asshole in a lot of ways. And one of those reasons is that he doesn't really take responsibility all that well. And he kind of lashes out at others. And that's very true to the character. And I was impressed with that because they do really make him unlikable in the first act of this film. And they managed to bring it back by showing kind of how he's grown as a person since the snap. And now he has to basically sacrifice that for the greater good. And I think that's a great emotional arc for him, because he's always been a character that has lacked a certain humanity that other characters have. And I think it's great that they managed to bring that around in this film. The Guardians, mostly it's Nebula and Rocket. Nebula gets a lot to do in this movie, actually, which was great. She did a very good job. And again, I'm not entirely sure if there's some plot holes with some of the time travel stuff. There is, but again, I kind of looked past it. There is a lot of things people are complaining about where you can bring a ship through the time travel, which means you can just bring any object, which, yeah. Okay. That's a pretty big plot hole from what I can tell. Again, there is a few plot holes. Like, they could probably make Cap younger if they wanted to. Because they did it with Ant-Man at one stage. But look, this is... It doesn't bother me that much. And if it didn't deliver on a lot of aspects, I would have been really annoyed. But it did deliver in enough places where it didn't bother me that much. The Rocket was fantastic. Seeing him interacting with the other Guardians was really hilarious. And I love that one moment where it's him and Nebula. That was like, again, I think that scene was more emotional got me more emotional than a lot of scenes in the movie, where they just finally get back from Earth and they realise all they've lost. It was tough to watch. Okay, so we talk about the time travel. They go back to basically 3 time periods in this, or 3 periods that we've seen before. They go to the first Avengers film, which we knew that was going to happen. Surprisingly, they got Robert Redford back, and they got the Strike Team back, and Loki I thought they'd get a bit more of, but I thought they played his character perfectly well. That it had some of the best scenes were the first Avengers movie. Some of the time travel aspects, like some of the scenes they went back to, we all knew there was going to be time travel in this film, I think. But I thought it was going to be, when I heard a lot of people saying, it ties together the whole MCU, I didn't know how far back they were going to go, or how many movies they were going to go through. They basically just go to 3 movies, and they go to the first Avengers film, they go to Thor 2, which was an odd one, but I guess they introduced the stone there, so they had to, and the first Guardians. The most interesting out of all of them was obviously the Avengers timeline. The Thor one was fine. Again, it was nice having Thor get that moment with his mother. I think it was really bittersweet. And it was nice seeing Natalie Portman. That was recycled footage, but maybe she could come back someday. It was nice that they didn't close the door. She was at the premiere as well. I think she was at a time where Marvel didn't really know what they were doing. In some regards, they had that creative committee, and she was never a character that was done justice, but maybe she could return down the line. I don't know. There was talk of Thor 4, but I don't know is that going to happen or where she would even fit into it. And yeah, no, that was a fine scene. It served its purpose. I didn't think it was as good as the others. Well, yeah, it was probably better than the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff. The Guardians of the Galaxy stuff was fine. It was serviceable, but it was pretty straightforward. As funny as it was to see Peter Quill dancing and then realizing that you're like, oh, if we can't hear the music, it really is it really shows how much of a dope he is. And yeah, he just got knocked out straight away. I was waiting for Korath to show up. I was kind of disappointed he didn't, but that was only a minor thing. And then, of course, it's really only there so we can find out that Thanos knows Nebula's plan, which I don't think I need to say much about that. I thought it was a great way to bring Thanos into the movie. I've seen some people complain that it robs Thanos of his motivation or his character development, and I'm sorry, that doesn't make any sense at all. Because they're acting as if he had an arc or he developed in Infinity War. He didn't. That was just a revelation to the audience. That he loved Gamora. That was always the case. It's just that we found out. So he still loves Gamora here. He's still this merciless character. But I think Brolin got to play him a bit differently in this. He was a bit more ruthless. He wasn't as confident in his actions. And maybe it was because he didn't have the stones at that point. But I thought it was a good way of handling that character and bringing him into the movie and made sense. I know a lot of people were shocked that they killed him. I knew they were going to not kill him, but I knew it would be wrapped up pretty quickly because there's so much in this movie. How's it going to work otherwise? I was curious how they were going to bring it back into it, and they did that very well in a way I wouldn't have expected. And it plays with the whole time travel narrative that worked in a very effective way. So the last timeline, I guess, is the Avengers one that we haven't talked about in detail. They brought a lot of great characters back here, and they did a fantastic job of making each scene and each attempt to get the stone interesting. So we have Iron Man and Ant-Man team up to get the Tesseract, which I like their team up again. We got to see Robert Redford, which was shocking. I like what's really impressive about this movie. And I said this to the guy I saw it with. Imagine that this movie is so big that they got actors like Robert Redford and Michael Douglas and had them in it for about 30 seconds, which is amazing. But it's great, I think theirs was probably weaker compared to the other stone scenes in New York. I like the plan of giving Tony a fake heart attack and having him, try to get the cube. That obviously results in Loki getting the cube, which that got an amazing reaction because, of course, that's exactly what Loki would do. And it's great because that's presumably going to set up his TV series, which again, more timey-wimey stuff that might mess with people's head a bit. But as it was, the Hulk and Ancient One, again, another surprise to see the Ancient One back. That was kind of the necessary scene to explain time travel a bit. It was fine, but it was necessary, I guess. I was never bored with it, obviously, because it was well done. And of course, Cap. This is some of my favourite scenes in the movie, or when Cap is in the Avengers. He goes back, he fights himself, which was great. I really thought that he would kick his ass though. Like in the first Avengers movie, you remember that he's not great yet. Like there's that moment where he's trying to fight Loki, and Black Widow's like, God, he's sloppy. So I was expecting this Cap to basically kick his ass, but that didn't really transpire. But it was still a satisfying way, and they did it in a creative way. Having him see Peggy Carter. They did a great job actually planting the seeds for Peggy Carter. If for some reason you didn't really know the story there, you'd probably get it from this movie. It was done very well, because he also sees her later on when he goes to the 70s. But yeah, using the Loki pokey stick or whatever it's called, the scepter, is a great way of getting out of that, and also using the rules of the universe. So again, you're rewarding people who have been so committed to this overall. Of course, one of the highlight scenes was the callback to Winter Soldier. He gets in the elevator. Everyone in the cinema was waiting. They were like, "Here comes the elevator fight," and he just goes, "Hail Hydra," and then we see him walking out. People went ape. That was great because of course he wouldn't fight all those people if he didn't have to, and you're never going to top the same fight from Winter Soldier. So it was very, very intelligent way to get out of that. Then we go to the 70s. This was really good. I think what works with it is that they gave us, 3 scenes that we've seen before to give us something new and flesh out the history, and also give us those emotional moments. Worked really well, and to have Cap and Iron Man kind of team up, because they hadn't really teamed up properly. I mean, they kind of mended their fences a little bit beforehand, but having them work together here was a strong move, I think. So Tony gets to meet his father, which it was fine. I wouldn't say it was emotional, as some people have described it as. I think that's a step too far. But it was good. It kind of fleshed out their character a bit. And I think Tony's always been someone who had dad issues. And to get him have that moment with his father was a good call. It really works. And I'll never say no to more John Slattery. Even if he didn't really... He seemed very calm. He was like, who's this weird beatnik guy wandering around this lab? But hey, wouldn't worry about it too much. Also, by the way, the only time a Marvel TV character has been brought into the MCU. I didn't even think most people caught it when I saw it. I don't know if they did even. But Agent Carter's Jarvis, James Darcy, I think his name is. He was brought into this, which, brilliant. That's all you need. Just little hints like that. And that's actually one thing I would say. I'm kind of disappointed they didn't get Colton in there somewhere. But it would have been tricky, I suppose, to get him in there. There's so much else going on in this film. Cap, has his moment with Agent Carter, which was again quite sweet, and sets up for our ending. I think that was the 70s aspect. Having Michael Douglas de-aged with the classic Ant-Man helmet was a nice touch. Subtle stuff, but again nothing major. And again, you get to go back to I can't remember the name of the army base, but the army base in New Jersey that has also been pretty pivotal to this universe. So to have that callback works as well, ties this whole universe together. And I guess once you talked about all the time travel stuff, that stuff was a lot of fun. But the main payoff is that last act. I thought them undoing the snap was quite, it was subtle. Having him kind of get the birds are flying in the bushes, the phone is ringing. It's Hawkeye's wife. I think that was a much more subtle way of doing it that worked. And again, when this is happening, you're questioning what's the threat going to be and how is Thanos going to get here? And I guess they resolved that pretty easily by just transporting a ship through time, but whatever. Of course, this is what everyone is going to be talking about realistically, is the big fight with pretty much everyone. I think the only people not in it are the Defenders. And I'd say, they probably would have tried him if it wasn't for the Netflix deal, maybe. Even Howard the Duck was in it, which I didn't notice at the time, but I saw pointed out after, and I'm like, wow. Good job, guys. Let's talk about the big action scene, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot to cover. There's a lot of people are saying, "Oh, there's a lot of fan service in this." There should be. This is meant to be a finale to all these things. I expect this film to be a bit indulgent, and that's what it is. It's an indulgent film, but it kind of feels warranted, especially because they do make it feel like such an ending. So our big battle, of course, call back to the Winter Soldier, which I've seen a few other people point out. Like, it's weird how these lines mean something to us in the context of a film. It's surprising that but in the mainstream continuity, this is like a line someone said to him nearly 10 years ago that I guess is memorable enough, but things like that. But it's forgivable again because this is an indulgent film, like I said. Big action scene. So we have Cap and Iron Man and Thor fighting Thanos first. And again, I was talking about the trailers beforehand and how they were used to conceal stuff. I spotted a few times how they did this. First of all, when we see Rocket go through the door, Hulk was actually behind him. They cut that out of trailers. And Cap's shield being broken. That was revealed as whole in the footage we saw. So good job of concealing that for one. Nice callback to Age of Ultron as well, I guess, with the broken shield. The fight scene was very well done, and I thought they did a great job of convincing us that Thanos was a believable threat. Even though, I don't know if the whole power dynamic works there either. Why is he able to keep up with three of them? He's without the stones at times, but it is what it is. Really, what this film is that the big moment, of course, everyone's talking about is going to be the portals with all these characters coming back. Which I know a lot of people give Marvel, stick for the music. The soundtrack in that scene, Portals from the soundtrack, is absolutely fantastic. I've been listening to it all week. It's a real epic piece of music that also has the Marvel theme and the Avengers theme, more specifically, kind of echo throughout it. Alright, how do we even get started? Because there's so much going on here. Let's start with some of the simple moments. The moments that probably got the biggest reaction. Which, obviously the introduction of On Your Left and then all these characters coming back. The armies of Wakanda and all this. I also liked how the Black Order was there. Not that they got a lot to do, but I just feel like if it was just some army, it would have meant a little bit less. So it was nice to see them at least thrown in there, thrown a bone if nothing else. Of course, the moment where Actually, this happens before everyone comes through the portals, but Cap picking up Mjolnir. That was massive. I think I cheered at that moment even, where it was like, whoa, because I was obviously it was going to happen, but I still wasn't ready at the time. Like I knew Cap was going to pick up then because I would have predicted that from the beginning, but I just forgot about it in the moment, and then it got me, And of course, it's a callback a bit to Age of Ultron, and it's. I've said this to someone after. Is like when you look at the amount of restraint this movie or this whole universe even had to hold off on getting all these characters together for 11 years, to hold off on them saying Avengers Assemble for 4 Avengers movies. And that's why it's such an amazing achievement that they pulled it off, and it feels so much more deserved now. And I don't know how they're ever going to top this, to be honest. It'll take at least another 10 years. And of course, I can picture a few stories and even villains where it'll work, of course, if they bring in the X-Men, the Fantastic Four. It'd be interesting to see where they go next, but we might talk about that in a sec. So, what are some of the highlights of the battle scenes? Again, I kind of criticised Captain Marvel thing. She was fine in the battle, but there is that one moment that some people hate it more than others. This is the kind of token all the women in the Marvel universe, and it took me out of it a little bit. And it wasn't that I hated it. I don't hate that moment. I like seeing all the female heroes together. That's cool, because even a couple of years ago, it didn't seem like Marvel had that many female heroes. And to get them all together is cool, but it just kind of ruined my immersion a little bit. Because I'm like, why are they all at that part of the battlefield? And also, why is Captain Marvel, they're really selective about how powerful Captain Marvel is. Like, she could have just picked that glove up and just zoomed and just gone with it. She could have taken out half the people there if she really wanted. But it is what it is. I won't nitpick it for that. We sort of had this whole. It's kind of like callback to the first Avengers film, where we get this panning shot between all these heroes. Guardians working away, fantastic. Gamora returning, and that's going to be very interesting for the next Guardians film, whatever that becomes, as Guardians of the Galaxy or whatever it is. Valkyrie, fantastic, coming in on a Pegasus. Peter accessing instant kill mode, great callback. Really funny when it was like he thought he got this, and then he was just slowly being overrun. It was great. And again, I love that moment as well when Iron Man got to embrace him in the middle of the battle. Ant-Man taking out the giant, I can't even remember what you call him, the Chitauri's kind of space slug thing was awesome. Yeah, it's, there's so much fan service. Everything is happening in this movie. I can't wait to see this again, to just pick up on the little moments again. It's fantastic. They really, like I said, I keep saying they're indulgent, and it's deserved, and it's really rewarding as a viewer as well. It was an amazing experience to see this battle play out. And I can't believe they waited so long to get all these characters together, but it was absolutely warranted, and it worked. Scarlet Witch was fantastic when she just came out of nowhere. That got a cheer as well. Her trying to get revenge for Vision was brilliant. Again, I do feel the Hulk was shortchanged. Bit of a shame in that regard, but I thought it worked very well. Doctor Strange, he had some awesome moments. I really hope they bring this version of Doctor Strange to a sequel, because this is a character that we can really be more interested in. All the sorcerers in general, actually, that was a nice touch to bring them all in. It makes sense as well. And having that one moment where he just indicates to Tony that this is the moment, this is the one chance, was brilliant. You could again probably pick it apart, like how did he get the gems off his hand so quickly? But again, movie logic, and it's Stark technology. You can't pick and choose with some of that stuff. And of course he snaps and they fade into dust, which was great. I mean, probably one of the best battle scenes in a movie I can think of. Totally warranted. The amount of restraint, as I keep saying, makes this completely rewarding for anyone who's dedicated themselves to this. And I can't wait to see it. I'm going to see this again tomorrow on an IMAX screen. I can't wait to watch this battle again. And I don't know if I'd ever get sick of it. It's perfect, and I would say, again, this whole film has faults. There's issues with all of it. Again, with a lot of blockbusters, you kind of turn off your brain. it's not that movie. It's not a turn off your brain movie. There is nitpicks and there's holes, as there will be with any time you kind of deal with time travel. But it's a film that manages to get all those elements from all these films and tie them together and make it feel like an ending. And it's rewarding, which is great. I mean, it's really hard to review this movie because it's hard to express how impressive an achievement this is. It's not just an amazing film. This is probably the biggest event in modern blockbuster history, surely. It's I mean, the records speak for itself, but this is a film that nearly the whole world is talking about. Everyone's going to see it. And the fact that this end in quotation marks, to this universe is incredibly satisfying, and it's earned, which is much more impressive. I don't know what to say. I feel like Infinity War is the stronger film from a narrative perspective. But as far as fan service that feels warranted and earned, this film is outstanding. It's just a really good movie. As far as what comes next, I'm doing a video that I'll have up soon about what the next 3 years is going to look like, because that's we have dates for the next 3 years of Marvel movies. They're not going to announce their slate until after Spider-Man, so it'll probably be Comic-Con maybe in July. What this means for the future, I mean, it looks like Thor could be in the Guardians of the Galaxy. I know Thor and Adam Warlock have locked horns a couple of times, so it could be something to do with that. Maybe Thor is not even going to be in it at all. Maybe they're going to do Thor 4 separately. Not entirely sure. But A-Force is hinted at in the movie. Of course, I think we could get that. Again, it would probably require some pretty creative writing for why they only want the female characters to work together, not the male characters, but I'm sure they could find a way around that. What else is hinted at? Well, of course, Sam gets the shield. I think that's the right choice. I think Winter Soldier already has his own identity, and I think, his whole arc throughout the MCU has been sort of figuring out who he is. And now that you know who he is, if he's going to just be like, I'm going to be Captain America now, I just don't think it would make a lot of sense. And he's known Steve for his whole life essentially, and if he just stepped into his friend's shoes, I think that would be a bit weird. I think Sam is a bit more deserved. And I haven't seen any horrible backlash by any racist yet, which is nice for a change. Hopefully that never becomes the case. Valkyrie is now the queen of Asgard. That's good. I enjoy that, because Valkyrie is a great character. I find her very entertaining. She's basically running Asgard when we see her in the movie anyway, so why wouldn't she be, I feel like a lot of the Thor movies have been about him not being able to really accept his place as king. So I think that's alright. It's going to be interesting to see where Thor goes from here, because it feels like he has a new perspective on life. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with this character, because he's been really reinvented since Ragnarok, and I wonder what they do with him next. Guardians 3, it looks like it's going to be about the search for Gamora. I had heard at one stage that the script was very Gamora-centric, so maybe that's what this is leading into. What else is there? Spider-Man, Far From Home is the next one. A lot of people are like, hey, why is his friend okay? I didn't even thought of that, to be honest, at the time. But yeah, what they're saying now is officially, basically all of Peter's friends were dusted. There's all sorts of weird implications about this dusting and going 5 years. So I thought they might just go back to, before the 5 years started, but obviously they didn't. But obviously there's implications of people just appearing, or spouses that have moved on, or what if someone, just spawns in a wreckage at the bottom of the sea? All sorts of strange questions like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be odd. Like, let's say if someone was in an airplane when they got dusted, did they appear in the middle of the air? In which case they're probably dead. Did they appear under the water or in the plane wreckage, which God knows where that ended up? Like weird stuff like that you could probably nitpick or think about, but I don't think it's going to be addressed. Marvel have a bit of a habit of sort of making this world of, hey, everything's different, everything's changed, and then it's like, no, not really. But it's not a big deal. I think overall the continuity is a lot better. What other characters might we see? There's apparently a hint at Namor in this movie. I don't think he's going to get solo. He's in a weird rights issue to say him as the Hulk. Maybe he could show up in a team up. People have said Black Panther. I know there was some people speculating he'd been teased for Doctor Strange by Scott Derrickson. I think that'd be the worst place to put him. He'd work if they did a Fantastic Four movie. He was kind of reintroduced in the Marvel comics. with the Fantastic Four. I think that's a while away from happening anyway, which, I'll get into all that stuff in a video that I'll have going up soon. And yeah, that's it. I feel like Endgame is probably the end of an era as far as the Marvel Universe goes. And I think some people might actually jump off now. I think they're probably in a rebuilding period. And it's not probably, I don't know, is it going to be, billion dollar hit from now on? They're at a probably uncertain place. But it's interesting to see where it goes. And after 11 years of these movies and having a payoff that feels warranted and works, how can you write them off and say you're done? Like I said, I thought this was one of the most fun experiences I've ever had in the cinema. I'm not saying it's the best film I've ever seen in the cinema. I'm not even saying it's the best film in the MCU, but it's fan servicey that feels warranted. And there's so many amazing moments in this that I can't wait to see this movie again. I know this is a scattered review, but it's a tough film to attack from so many different angles. There's a lot going on in it. But there we go. I give it a highest recommendation I can think of. Really, if you're a fan of these Marvel movies, obviously you're going to love this. If you don't like these films, you probably won't enjoy it because you won't know what's going on. But it's a lot of fun. It feels like a satisfying conclusion. And you can't really ask for anything more. So, there we go. That is Avengers Endgame. Okay, that's going to do it for the podcast. So, I want to make a few announcements, I guess. So, the podcast it's now been going about 4 months. It was always basically planned up to Endgame. And, of course, we just had Endgame. So, I think, unless there's some big news, there might be a Spider-Man trailer next week, maybe even the end of this week, I don't know, which means there might be an episode still. I want to take at least a week off. I want to replan. I feel the show has, to a certain degree, moved away from what I wanted it to be. I'd like to do features. I'd like to talk about various topics. The last maybe 5 episodes have all been Marvel for the most part. It's not going to be that going forward. I don't want it to be constantly reviews, especially coming into the summer, because I like doing these topics. I like talking about, films outside of just comic book movies constantly, as much as I love them. I also would say, I don't know if anyone's listening to this. I see listeners. I don't know if they're consistent listeners or are there people that are returning week to week. If you are, please drop me a line. It would mean a lot. And, I want to know what's going on while you make it a show. Feedback. So the show, it might be in a rebuilding period. It might be gone a week. Might be gone 2 weeks. Could be back next week if the news warrants coming back, to be honest. But I want to reevaluate where things are. Kind of maybe tweak a few things. There's a few aspects of the show I'm not entirely happy with. Like I said, this is a work in progress. We should always try improve it as much as I can. I might shorten a segment. I might get rid of a few segments. We'll have to see. And yeah, I want to talk about some other aspects of pop culture. I don't want to just review films constantly, because I don't know is that necessarily my strong point, but I don't want every episode to just be a review. And I also don't want every episode to be over 2 hours long, because it's indulgent and I haven't earned it like Endgame has. So that's where we're at. If you've been listening to this, if you want to get in touch with podcasts, you can reach me on Twitter, pop_cult_pod, Instagram, popcultpod, all one word. You can hit me up on email, popcultpod@gmail.com. Facebook, Popcult Compound, if you want to join the page, like it, of course, for all the latest announcements. Check out the YouTube channel, Popcult Pod. I've got 2 videos I'm working on at the moment, and probably some more to come. I'm really working harder on the YouTube stuff. That's why a few of the podcast episodes have been delayed. I've been trying to teach myself how to edit a bit better, gotten better camera work, of course. Wherever you're listening to this, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, that would be fantastic. And if you're on iTunes or you have an iTunes account, please give a positive review. It would really affect things. It would be a really positive thing for the show, because it's not going anywhere. But I have to make a few tweaks, make a few changes, hopefully for the better. So if there's something you want to see more of, something you want to see less of, feel free to drop me a line. Alright. Because as I say at the end of every show, I can't spell cult without you. Fell or not.